Hello everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. I am Jason C. and welcome to the Mash and Drum 2019 Whiskey Awards. 2019 was a big year in whiskey. Big bourbon and whiskey producers kept things interesting with no shortage of special releases and additions to core product lines. Craft distilleries kept pushing the envelope and innovating with new grains, exotic barrels, and finishing techniques. And we can't forget the incredible rise of rye whiskey from both craft and big name producers as well. All in all, 2019 had a lot to offer and a lot to taste. Today I'm going to give you my 2019 Whiskey Awards that will feature some fun categories and ultimately my 2019 Whiskey of the Year. So the criteria for my selections had to be whiskeys that I reviewed, tasted over the course of some time, and were released in 2019. I didn't include any samples I received or any whiskey I didn't have a chance to truly sit down and judge fairly. Now, let's get into our first category. So my first award goes to Best Value for the Money Whiskey, and that goes to Old Forester Rye. There was no whiskey this year that had more value to me than Old Forester Rye. Old Forester's first new mash bill in almost 150 years, consisting of 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 15% corn. This bottle has everything. It's delicious, neat, on the rocks, works amazingly well in both traditional rye and bourbon cocktails. Not only that, it's available pretty much everywhere, and a 750 milliliter bottle is only about 25 bucks. This is what a new core range release should be: delicious, affordable, and available. Bravo, Old Forester. My next category is Surprise Whiskey of the Year, and that goes to the Barrel Craft Spirits Barrel Dovetail. Now, Barrel Craft Spirits is known for creating delicious blends with unique combinations, and this one was no exception. Dovetail was released under the barrel whiskey line named Dovetail instead of giving it a batch number or calling it a whiskey. Essentially, this had so much finishing going on, they really couldn't call it a whiskey, so they just named it Dovetail. Barrel Dovetail took nearly a year to perfect, and it's a blend of 10 and 11-year-old whiskey and bourbon finished in rum, port, and Dun Vineyard Cabernet barrels. This one is 122.9 proof and just floored me. I thought all the finishes together were gonna be way too much sweetness, and even though it is sweet, you got such a great blend of raisins, berries, molasses. There's some maple syrup in there from the rum, some sweet oak as well. It's absolutely delicious. Add a couple drops of water to this and it really opens up nicely. At 80 bucks, if you enjoy sweet whiskey or Dovetail, then I highly recommend trying this one. Next category is Biggest Disappointments of 2019, and first up is the re-release of the beloved Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond. Now, if you remember, the original 6 year was discontinued and then brought back 1 year older and about $30 to $35 higher. This release I was really excited for and ended up picking the discontinued Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond over this one in a couple blind tastings. Now, if you're gonna raise the price on something that much and put it in the realm of Wild Turkey Rare Breed and other bourbons at that price, it better come out swinging. And this one just didn't for me. On top of that, this wasn't even released in Kentucky at launch, which is the state that made the original bottle so famous. Not cool. Next up is the Woodford Chocolate Malted Rye. Now, don't let the name fool you. This is a bourbon, not a rye. For this release, Woodford roasted the rye malt to a level where its natural sugars caramelize into a dark chocolate note. I actually know some folks who enjoyed this one, but at $120 to $130, this was only bottled at 90.4 proof and had some nice coffee chocolate notes at first, but as it opened up, it got really bitter and just didn't justify the price. For the extra money you pay for these Master Collection bottles out of Woodford, I feel like they need to go up in proof, non-chill filter it to maximize flavor and justify that price point. Lastly is the Baker's 13 Bourbon. Baker's 13 was a special release that went along with the rebranding and conversion from Baker's Bourbon from a small batch to a single barrel offering. Now, with the release of the new 7-year single barrel, this 13 year was released as well in a beautiful silver box, a silver label. The MSRP for this one was about $100, but this was selling for upwards of $200 and $250 in most places. Now, this was still bottled at 107 proof, but for me, didn't offer enough of a difference to warrant that price jump. Other than a bit more oak, this one really missed the mark for me. Plus, I was also expecting a heavy metal cork on this bottle, and it's actually plastic. A premium price on a special release should have all the bells and whistles for the consumers, as well as some more differentiation there. I know this is 13 years old, but it just missed the mark for me. Next up was my top whiskey not from Kentucky. Now the craft industry is booming, and so are more than 1,800 distilleries creating amazing and unique whiskey in every corner of the United States. Obviously I wasn't able to try all of them, but of the ones I did, these are the whiskeys that stood out and really made an impression. First up is Woodinville. Woodinville Whiskey Company opened their doors in Woodinville, Washington in 2010 and began distilling with the assistance of industry legend, the late great Dave Pickerel. Now, while they distill just outside of Seattle, Washington, that climate doesn't exactly lend itself to efficient barrel aging, so they ship those filled barrels to Quincy on the other side of the Cascades, where they are warehoused at the same farm from which they source most of their grain. This is a true grain-to-glass distillery, and you could taste the quality. I have here the bourbon, the 90 proof bourbon, and also the special release cask strength. Both of them just really blew me away. Tons of caramel, vanilla, cherry, and chocolate just jump out of the glass. The bourbon at only 90 proof, this is as complex as they come, and if none of you out there have tried Woodinville bourbon whiskey, add it to your list immediately. Next up, we are going to Texas, where some of the country's most unique whiskeys are being made. Now this one is out of Waco, Texas from Balcones. Balcones Distilling was the first Texas whiskey maker since Prohibition. Although it was not the first distillery, Garrison Brothers is slightly older, it was the first one to release a whiskey. Founded by Chip Tate and Jared Himstead in 2008, it has grown to become one of the largest craft distilleries in Texas with an innovative and diverse core range of whiskeys. But the one that blew me away in 2019 was the Balcones French Oak, or Froke as they like to call it. This is a Texas single malt aged in French oak casks with notes of chocolate, pepper, root beer, dark fruits, and a finish that just goes on and on with allspice and even some more chocolate. Now this is a special release in Texas only, unfortunately, but for my favorite of the year, I have another option from Texas for you to try. Iron Root Harbinger is from Iron Root Republic Distilling Company from Denison, Texas. Founders Robert and Jonathan Licorice have mastered the art of taking traditional and not so traditional grains to create unique flavors that are both familiar and new. Take that and add some Texas funk to it, and you have this, Iron Root Harbinger. Crafted from purple corn, bloody butcher corn, flint corn, non-GMO yellow dent corn, and rye, this non-chill filtered, barrel-proof Texas bourbon is an absolute flavor bomb. Dark sugars, dark fruits, nuttiness, corn sweetness, savory herbs, even some maple syrup on top. Now, it was easily my favorite this year. This may not be in every state in the US just yet, but it's getting easier to find. If you see this one and have been interested in trying something from Texas, Iron Root Harbinger is one you need to add to your list. Next category is my top rye of the year. As I mentioned earlier, rye whiskey arguably might have been the fastest growing whiskey category in the US in 2019. Both craft distilleries and the big boys were getting into the rye game. There were a few that I got to try that stuck out, and here they are. Now I had mentioned the Old Forester rye and how great it is for the price and for cocktails, so let's talk about my top two. First up is Master's Keep Cornerstone from Wild Turkey. Wild Turkey Master's Keep Cornerstone was the fourth release in the Master's Keep series, and was the first rye whiskey that Wild Turkey had released in the series as well. It's also the longest aged and the highest proof rye ever released, has a 9-year age statement, but is said to have 11-year-old whiskey in there blended as well. This was a rye whiskey that needed time to open up. Initially, this one fell a little bit flat for me, but the super long and evolving finish just kept me coming back to keep trying this one. Now, when this one got some air in it, the rye really shined. I had some flavors of cherry, orange, mint, some nice caramels. On the finish though, cherry, cinnamon, red hot, that finish just lasted for days. If you like a spicier rye, then this one probably wouldn't impress you too much. This is a barely legal rye with the rye content just getting over that 51% mark to make it a rye. So it is a bit sweeter, but it is very complex, and that finish on it is what kept me coming back for more, and that's why it's my number two. My number one rye of the year is the Michter's Barrel Proof Rye. Now, Michter's uses the lowest barrel entry proof in the industry at only 103 proof, which yields a richer, smoother, more full-bodied rye whiskey after aging. Now, proofs for this bottle can range between 107 to 112, 113. I have seen it as high as 115, and the flavors are just outstanding. This one drinks way easier than a typical barrel proof rye. It's packed with honey, spearmint, orange zest, brown sugars, baking spices. It's super oily and rich on the palate. It's just candy in a glass. It's the best way I can describe it. This retails for about 75 bucks, and it's just delicious. It's easily my rye of the year. Now it's time to get into my top bourbons of 2019. So to pick my bourbons of the year, I chose my top 5 in 2 categories. Since a lot of great bourbons out there are hard to get and very limited, I split my top bourbons into 2 lists. Top limited release bourbons of 2019 and top everyday bourbons of 2019. Again, all these selections had to be new or limited release, and we're putting a blind taste test to get my final rankings. First, my top 5 everyday bourbons. Coming in at number 5, it's Bardstown Bourbon Company Discovery Series. This is a delicious blend from the innovative group at Bardstown Bourbon Company. This is a blend of 4 different bourbons, all different ages, 5% 13-year-old, 75% 11-year-old, 10% 10-year-old, and 10% 5-year-old, with 3 different mash bills, all made with rye, no wheat. As you can see on the label, they are very transparent about what goes in this bottle, and the result is a balanced, flavorful, and delicious blended bourbon that just wowed me from the first sip. Caramel, butterscotch, and cinnamon, a long finish, and a lot of flavor. This is 121.21 proof and available in select markets for $130. Coming in at number 4 is Four Roses Small Batch Select. Master Distiller Brent Elliott selected and mingled 6 of the Four Roses 10 bourbon recipes, each aged a minimum of 6 years, to handcraft Small Batch Select. This is non-chill filtered and 104 proof. This was a new and permanent addition to the Four Roses product line and offers delicious and truly unique flavors. This is everything you want in a new release. It's over 100 proof, it's non-chill filtered, has an array of flavors that evolve and change with some air or adding a little bit of water. Now, mint, cherry, butterscotch, citrus, peach, baking spices. For about $60, Four Roses has made a delicious extension to the line and has quickly become a standard on my shelf. Coming in at number 3 is Booker's Country Ham. This is the 3rd release in the Booker's lineup for 2019 and was an absolute winner. Coming in at 124.7 proof, aged 6 years, 4 months, and 2 days. This was one of my favorite Booker's releases in a long time. The brown sugars and vanilla sweetness on this batch were so amped up and just super delicious. It drinks a lot easier than that barrel proof label would indicate, and it gives off some incredible sweet flavors on the finish as well. Now, Booker's is about 70 to 80 bucks in most areas, but if you're a Booker's fan and looking for your next batch, put Country Ham on that list. Coming in at number 2 is Stag Junior Batch 12. This was released in the summer of 2019, bottled at 132.3 proof with a price around 60 bucks. This batch of Stag Junior blew me away. Earlier releases of Stag Junior have been known for drinking really hot, having too much alcohol flavor. With this batch, they flipped that notion on its head by turning that alcohol punch into pure flavor. Those quintessential cherry cola, molasses, baking spices, dark maple syrup, and an incredible mouthfeel made this one for me one of my favorites this year. This was so good, in fact, I chose it over the 2019 George T. Stag twice in a blind tasting. Batch 12 became the bourbon that everyone hoped Stag Junior would become. An almost George T. Stag experience for a fraction of the price. Amazing batch and my number 2 this year. Coming in number 1 in my everyday bourbons is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C919. Now, still in my mind, the best value in bourbon, this year's 3rd release came in at a robust 136.8 proof and was released in September 2019. Now, like all Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs, they're 12 years old and packs a ton of flavor. There's something about the C batches each year that really just kind of, I don't know, wow me or kind of blow me away. This one smells like a rick house on a cold fall day. Deep, rich caramels, brown sugars, vanilla extract, sweet oak. It's incredibly oily and has this honey roasted peanut and butterscotch finish that just goes on for days. Now, if you struck out looking for BTAC, definitely try to find this. Being 12 years old, barrel proof, non-chill filtered, and a price range of about 60 to 80 bucks, to me, there is no better value in bourbon. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C919, number 1 everyday bourbon of 2019. Now let's rank my top 5 allocated or special release bourbons for 2019 and then name my whiskey of the year. Coming in at number 5 in this category was Lux Row Distillers 12-year Double Barrel Bourbon. Now, Lux Row Distillers Double Barrel was a new limited edition bourbon that commemorates the opening of Lux Row Distillers distillery. Now, the double barrel in its name represents the process of selecting 2 12-year-old bourbon barrels that paired well together. This release is bottled at 118.4 proof, which is an intentional nod to the distillery's grand opening in April 2018. This was $150 and only available at the distillery, unfortunately. But when I saw it at the distillery, I saw this bottle. This bottle top weighs, it must weigh like 15 pounds. It's pure copper, it's engraved, it's got a beautiful steel plate up front. As you can see in the close-ups, it's absolutely a beautiful bottle. This was an impressive release with so much flavor. Cherry and chocolate kind of dominate this bourbon, a lot of cherry and chocolate flavors. It has so much dark fruit sweetness too. It was like a finish in port wine casks. An absolutely amazing bourbon from Lux Row Distillers. Coming in at number 4 is Foregate Batch 1, the Kelvin collaboration. Now, the Foregate Whiskey Company innovates by collaborating with Kelvin Cooperage to create a unique combination of whiskey and finishing barrels. Their first release was an 11-year-old source bourbon that was finished in a sherry cask that also aged rum. Now, this bourbon is just an explosion of sweet flavors. Maple syrup, toasted marshmallows, raspberry jam, but the beauty of this bourbon is the balance. You would think that the finishing process of this would overwhelm the bourbon, but they did a great job of keeping that oak, caramel, and vanilla flavor to go along with the complementary sweet flavors. This was a limited release and priced at $200. Now, if money is no object and you're looking to try something truly unique and absolutely delicious, try hunting this one down. Coming in at number 3 is the revitalized Kentucky Owl brand release, the Kentucky Owl Bourbon Batch 9. Now, according to those behind it, is Master Blender Dixon Desmond's highest proof batch to date at 127.6 proof. It is made with 4 different distillates from 4 different mash bills, including a 15-year-old, 2 different lots of 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 7-year-old, and 6-year-old distillate. I've only had the chance to try a few Kentucky Owl bourbon batches, and while they were good, it never truly made an impression on me until this one. The flavors in this bourbon are just second to none. It's a Cinnabon in the glass. Add some strawberry jam, almond butter, and vanilla extract to that as well. The best part of the bourbon though is the finish. Not the initial finish, it's about 10 seconds after you swallow it where you think it's over, and then all of a sudden this sweet cinnamon almond flavor just kind of appears and it lingers for days. It is absolutely delicious, and it's why it's my number 3. Coming in at number 4 is the William LaRue Weller for 2019. Now, William LaRue Weller is the barrel-proof wheated bourbon from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, and maybe the most consistent each year. This year was definitely no exception. This is bottled at 128 proof, 12 years, 6 months old. This year's offering was candy in a glass. Now, when I reviewed this one, I said it reminded me of Pillsbury toaster strudel. A ton of concentrated, fruity sweetness, some buttery and flaky pastry crust with vanilla icing on top. Now, being a wheated bourbon, it drinks really easy for 128 proof bourbon, and just ended up bringing so much flavor on the palate, the finish, the mouth coating, the viscosity, how oily it was. It was sweet, it's oaky, has perfect balance. It definitely makes an impression. I mean, it's BTAC, and it's number 2. So before my number 1 in 2019 Whiskey of the Year, I want to thank all of you for your support in 2019 and look forward to more great whiskey in 2020. And also helping you with your whiskey purchases while also providing a little history behind each bottle. Thank you so much, and cheers. Coming in at number 1 is the Four Roses Limited Edition Small Batch 2019. Now, this is non-chill filtered, bottled at 112.6 proof. The 2019 limited edition marks the first Four Roses limited quantity bottling to feature a 21-year-old bourbon, which is from the distillery's OESV recipe. This release also features a 15-year-old OESK, a 15-year-old OESV, and an 11-year-old OESV. Now, what made me pick this one was the incredible flavor balance and how all the different ages and Four Roses recipes all complemented each other. This is one of those ever-evolving bourbons where one day you pick up more citrus, more peach, more cherry. The next day you pick up more mint, some more baking spices. The common thread though to me was this beautiful sweet oak finish that gave leather, tobacco, and I think that came from that 21-year-old bourbon in there. I was just really impressed with how Brent Elliott blended this one and how each of those flavors in the recipes were able to shine through. I think for me, the artistry of the blending of those higher aged bourbons and an ever-evolving flavor experience each time I went back to this glass is what put it over the top for me, and it's why the 2019 Four Roses Limited Edition Small Batch is my number 1 limited release bourbon and my 2019 Whiskey of the Year. All right, everybody, well, I hope you enjoyed the 2019 Mash and Drum Whiskey Awards. Let me know down below in the comments what you liked about my list, what you didn't like, if you would have changed anything. Always love talking with you guys. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. I love talking with you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. And like I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. On to some great whiskeys in 2020. See you next time.